The DC Universe is the newest addition to Six Flags Fiesta Texas, as a section of Spassburg that has officially been rebranded, and with 3 new attractions, nice re-themes to existing rides, and a neat overall atmosphere. Just how good is the DC Universe at Six Flags Fiesta Texas? And is this the addition that this park needed? Find out in this review. Six Flags Fiesta Texas opened with 4 themed areas: Los Festivales, a Spanish-themed area at the front of the park; Crack Axle Canyon, a Wild West-themed area; Spassburg, a German-themed area; and Rockville, a 1950s-themed town. The Fiesta Bay Boardwalk was then added in 1994. Spassburg has seen the most change, though, as the German theming has been removed from the northern section of the park, with a plaza around Superman Krypton coaster and the theming of Joker Carnival of Chaos and DC Supervillain swings, which was a re-theme of the original swing ride that opened with the park. The top of this section has had a strong DC theme for the last couple of years. There was a smaller kids area that was briefly a Wiggles World before simply becoming a smaller Kidsopolis with a kiddie coaster and a few kid-only rides, along with a small play structure and a theater which was used very rarely, if at all, during its last few years standing. In 2023, Fiesta Texas opened Kid Flash Comic Coaster, a much-needed kid/family coaster that added a 4th roller coaster for guests who were 42 inches to enjoy. This coaster, however, replaced the bumper cars that opened with the park, and while those were old, they were one of the few low-thrill family rides left in the park outside of the Fiesta Bay Boardwalk. Thus, in 2023, it made sense when Fiesta Texas announced an expansion that would include 3 new family rides and a re-theme of their kids area. While coaster enthusiasts and thrill seekers were disappointed that the heavily teased announcement did not include a coaster, the park had received new coasters the previous 2 seasons and significantly lacks in family flat rides. I noticed this when I returned to Fiesta Texas in 2010. Although I was riding the coasters then, the part of me scared of coasters was very aware that few options existed for someone not wanting to ride the coasters or the bigger flat rides. And I've spent a few days at this park as a local waiting for the Fiesta Bay Boardwalk to open so that I could ride the few flat rides there and then go home. Last year over spring break, this area even had its own separate rope drop at 1 p.m. and it was packed. And I don't blame families for being desperate to get into the boardwalk. It's a great area of the park and the main area with family flat rides before the DC Universe opened. The DC Universe markets itself as the largest in North America, but I'm not sure how they come to this figure, unless they're including the area of Kid Flash Comic Coaster and more notably Superman Krypton Coaster, which is not really fair to base the size of this area from those 2 coasters. The Gotham City area at Six Flags Over Texas, which technically is not a DC Universe area, seems just about as big, at least when it comes to size. The main section of the DC Universe, the old kids area, is actually small and compact, which plays very well as it is super easy to bounce from ride to ride, and the area gives off a lot of energy when there are a bunch of people in there. The main issue with this area is the sun, as although the queue lines are lightly shaded, the midway here is blasted with heat, and there are only a few places to sit and hide in the shade. Although not an American standard, this makes me really wish that a large cover like those that can be found at Siam Amazing Park, or even the entrance to Vin Wonder's Food Walk, was used to shelter this area and make it super enjoyable, even on a hot sunny day. There is a lone pizza stand where you can get drink refills, and this didn't seem to have a terrible line for the amount of people in this area. There's also a nacho place and the Johnny Rockets over by Superman for more food options, and a nice cloth covering around the game midway by Superman. So that section of the DC universe at least is nicely out of the sun. As for attractions, the real treat for me was the Penguin, Gotham City Getaway. This is a re-theme of the basic kid car ride that opened with the park as Kinderbahn. This was called Big Red Car during the Wiggles World days and Crazy Cars during the Kidsopolis days, and then Rambling Road from 2020 to 2024. For the Penguin, the ride was given custom narration that tells the story of the Penguin trying to terrorize Gotham City. This dialogue is clear, so it is easy to understand, unlike many Six Flags dark rides, and with additional music throughout the area can only really be heard by the Penguin or Batgirl coaster chase. As the Penguin has barrels of toxic waste that he wants to put in a Gotham water supply, Batgirl comes to stop him. The few signs with comic book action help show this really well. Plus, you have the classic Kiddie coaster, now Batgirl coaster chase, which encircles the final scenes of the Penguin, and further creates the picture of Batgirl swooping in to defeat the Penguin. Batgirl as a coaster is a neat little kiddie coaster that I did have as my all-time favorite as a kid. The first drop offers a pinch of laterals and can be really nice under the right conditions, and despite its simple look, I do like this coaster as a solid kiddie coaster. The theming, though, is a really nice touch, and you can hear the Penguin audio well in line, but the theming is more for the car ride than the coaster itself. For those seeking the credit, adults are free to ride Batgirl Coaster Chase, though there is no Flash Pass, so the line could be long if you don't get here early or try to come late at night. However, with other rides not opening around Fiesta Texas, I've ended up rope dropping Batgirl more than I would have wanted to over the 2024 and 2025 seasons. Moving on. 2 other kid rides were re-themed, and it is worth noting that these and the Penguin, the 3 rides with previous height restrictions requiring adults to ride with a kid, have been removed, so the guests of all ages can enjoy them free of maximum height restrictions. Poison Ivy Toxic Spin has had a bunch of names, from Sky Searcher, Yummy Yummy Fruit Salad during Wiggles World, and then Up and Away during Kidsopolis. The light theming on and in the queue line is nice, though I wish there were more plants to provide a larger amount of shade to the area as a whole. The ride itself is very simple, but does spin fast enough to give mild forces, especially if you're facing backwards in your vehicle, as the cars themselves didn't seem to spin. It's a nice kiddie ride, and with the theming, plays a bit more even for older guests seeking a rather mild attraction. Green Lantern Emerald Flight, though, is a very basic kid plane ride with mild laterals as you go around. This ride has had different names, from Stunt Pilot, Big Red Planes, and Zoom Jets. You are not really able to get good hopping up and down on this ride like I can on other similar rides, so there really is not much enjoyable about this attraction overall, and the Green Lantern theming is rather lacking other than the cool looking planes. This is a very simple ride for kids, and I guess that's okay. The Metropolis Transit Authority is the one new attraction for mild guests. This slow-moving monorail moves around the former Kidsopolis area, so not a large footprint despite the record-setting size of the DC universe. The first pod is next to Bugs Bunny's Whitewater Rapids, which is neat to see from a theme park perspective, but not the DC universe theme. The rest of the track, though, does a nice job showing off the new area, and looks good despite some obvious backstage roofs over the food and game buildings. I wish they would have added some theming, especially that could have doubled as cover from the sun for those standing below, but it is nice for what it is. The line for this ride, though, likely will get long. They were running one train when I visited, though they do have two, and only 4 people can sit per car, with a maximum of only 16 riders per train. They were also enforcing a de facto weight limit by limiting each car to only 3 guests over 54 inches, i.e. the 4th guest had to be a child, and they were not filling in empty seats. As a single rider, I rode alone in my car on my first trip and was paired with a dad and his kid on my second. They also had to keep yelling at families to not touch the air gates, so I feel this ride could experience breakdowns during the day due to these gates. Even though this ride is included in the Flash Pass, the merge point is at the bottom of the stairs, and it will likely still take you 15 minutes to load based on how they were holding people on my visit. The other new attractions are larger. Shazam, Tower of Eternity, is a family drop tower. The theming for this ride was light, but I was really hopeful for this attraction as I generally enjoy both kiddie and family drop towers. This version does have some positive G's on the downward drops, which are not my favorite forces to feel in a drop tower. The tower also has very slow climbs and long drops with no good bouncing or kiddie drop tower feelings, which normally the shallow drops are enjoyable for me. These are just too long and drawn out to offer much in terms of drop feelings. Being next to Metropolis Transit Authority, you can also really tell how high you are with that building, so it feels a bit tall for a family drop tower. I like the idea of this ride, but it doesn't do much for me. Cyborg Cyber Revolution is a beautiful looking ride. This has a long load time, and while on ride, you can be stuck in the hot sun. The line will also likely crawl. And I used the Flash Pass Junior, which was only $25 plus tax on my visit, to bypass the wait specifically on this ride. This worked great as there likely wasn't a line for the Flash Pass queue, and they would put up to 8 people on the next cycle from the Flash Pass line. I do feel this will further hurt its overall capacity going forwards though, so just be prepared to wait if you're stuck in the standby line. The ride itself is impressive, with a pre-ride narration communicated to those standing in the queue line, and a whole sequence of narrations that occur while you are on the ride itself. With the narration and interaction of the arms, this ride is great to watch, but on ride it is rather unimpressive. Going backwards hurt my head slightly, especially with how going backwards plays with the mild positive G's on the downward swings. Going forward offered a small airtime pop over the top and more enjoyable overall forces. The ride cycle is very short, especially for the long wait for the ride, as the ride itself is not too great and the forces can start to mess with me. I don't mind the short cycle personally, but if you waited an hour for this ride, you could come off rather disappointed unless you're used to fairly mild attractions. The near misses on the arms going around look great off-ride, but you cannot notice these too much on the ride itself, so it's pretty basic for a ride. Supergirl Sky Flight is the retheming of Skyscreamer. This offers nice views of the quarry wall and the park, while the theming helps enhance the ride a little bit. The ride does go down and back up again to add a little bit of length, and being held so high up is scary. So these aren't my favorite flat rides for just how loose you are, though I do understand their appeal. The Joker Carnival of Chaos is a large pendulum ride that offers nice airtime on the apexes of the swings, while having nice theming with a walkthrough funhouse in the queue. The load time for this can make the line crawl. As someone a bit scared to go on a pendulum, especially one this big, Once I got on it, it really was not too bad, as you could just enjoy swinging and forget about how high you were going. Plus, most of the forces were enjoyable for me, which is not always the case with pendulum rides. DC's Supervillain Swings was rethemed in 2019, hosting previous names of Deflator Mouse when it opened with the park, and then Whirly Gig later on. The theming, including character bios in line, is a nice touch, and the classic but simple fun of a swing ride like this is terrific for the park overall. I do tend to avoid this ride though, mainly because I have ridden it a ton, and the positive G's on this ride can really mess with my head. But as a kid scared of coasters, I did ride and really enjoy this attraction, despite its moderate height off of the ground. Kid Flash Comic Coaster was supposed to be a strong family coaster to anchor this new area, but upon completion of the DC Universe, Six Flags announced the retirement of both versions of Kid Flash, which is sad as it really was a fun coaster and provided a fourth coaster for guests under 48 inches. With the strong family dynamics of the DC Universe, this would have complemented the area perfectly. If you want to know more about this coaster, you can check out my full review of this ride that was really open even when it was operational, and I feel lucky that I was able to ride it to make a review. Superman Krypton Coaster is the large steel coaster in this area, and is a classic B&M floorless coaster, with a record-setting loop and neat interactions with the quarry wall. For the DC Universe expansion, the entrance was moved through the gift shop, and the gift shop was expanded, removing some of the extra queue line behind it. In the front row, this coaster is great, with a wind and sense of speed, particularly the right side as you lean into the turns a bit more. In any other row, however, this coaster is pretty average, as I'm just not a fan of some of the later inversions on this coaster. The park will use this coaster to eat capacity, running 2 or even 3 trains, so the line should move fairly quickly, and if there is no line, you are normally always free to stay on and find an empty row to re-ride. Overall, how good is the DC Universe? This area offers a nice mixture of kid and family rides, with a few thrill rides mixed in as well. With it being centrally located in the park, it offers a good home base for families, and is working on becoming a strong center for Fiesta Texas. The theming is decent for most rides, and allows one to get excited about the DC characters, particularly the Penguin and Cyborg. I would like a bit more shade in the area, especially as it is so easy to bounce back and forth between rides, and I'm worried about how long lines can get here, though they were manageable when I got to this area early in the day on my spring break visit. It may not be a high thrill addition, but it is a strong family addition that Fiesta Texas really needed, so I'm glad and slightly surprised with how much the DC Universe adds to the park overall. What are your thoughts on the new DC Universe at Six Flags Fiesta Texas? Is this a good addition to the park? And which rides here are your favorite? Let me know, and as always, Cupcom Crap.